Hello, you multi-mouth watering misty moonshine machinists. And thank you to Jonathan Mace for that malt mention. You are probably interested in whisky, Scotch whisky and other quality spirits. It's why you're here, malt mates. And you're in the right place. You're in the Bothy, somewhere in the Irish Sea. And I am your commentator. Sometimes we get called influencers and experts, but it's not really appropriate, because when you're giving an opinion, it allows you wriggle room to express perspectives without having to rigorously stick to absolute facts, which in hindsight can turn out to be not as factual as people thought. But I tell you what, I'm sharing my experience, I'm sharing a malt moment, and I'm sharing an opinion and perspective. You see, that's an opinion and perspective about Springbank Distillery, because I've just reviewed this whisky in Ralphie Review 964, and I think it's fantastic whisky. In fact, so good I gave it a high mark of 88 out of 100. That's how highly I rate this single malt. And I rate this single malt because I rate the distillery, and I've been prudent enough, because I could see the times were a-changing, because you get that overview when you're online and talking about whisky, that I bought up a few bottles a number of years ago, so I'd have a little stash of maybe a dozen or so Springbanks, just to tide me over for the moment in time where demand exceeded supply, and there was a whole load of fans screaming out for more and more Springbank, and more permutations and variations of Springbank, and that time has arrived. It really has. We're in 2023. And if you go into any experienced, established, specialist liquor store anywhere in the world, and you ask them, have you got a bottle of Springbank? They will stop, smile sweetly, having had this request for the second time, the third time, the fourth time in the same week, and say, oh, that doesn't even sit in shelves. That flies out the door. And then you ask the person in the shop, and what other whiskies fly out the shop? At which point, the person behind the counter in the shop will pause, reflect for a minute and say, nah, just Springbank. Why is this? Why, malt mates, does Springbank have such a big reputation? Is it their marketing initiatives? Is it their all singing, all dancing video adverts that they pop onto the internet now and again because nobody else can be bothered to show them? And they cost a whole load of money. And you get some permutation, variation of some cliched lifestyle, catwalky type, Mad Max grunge music, yawn-inducing banality that you get from the big companies. And no, Springbank don't advertise. Sure, they have a marketing manager who basically looks after coping with all the messages from retailers and stockists around the world who just can't get enough of Springbank. And the question you're asking is, Ralphie, why? Why is everybody going mad for Springbank? And I'll tell you why. Because we're now in the age where, in terms of consuming products, people are graduating from consuming volume of inferior products to spending a light bit of a higher premium and trying to source quality products. So as people are consuming less quantity but more quality, and the internet above all other mediums, because no other mediums even compare to the internet now. The internet is so far ahead in its terms of its influence on spending habits in luxury brands, that Springbank is visible. All the information, the reviews, the forums, the comments, the whisky tastings, the virtual tastings, the ambassador sessions that have been online, they all point to the fact that when you make anything the best you can with experience and with the right resources, you're going to get the results. And when you get the results, people will want the results. They will want the quality, because the quality doesn't need big adverts, because it's purely where it matters, in the smell, in the taste, in the delivery. So here with Springbank, you have a distillery which prints on the label of its single malts that it's not artificially coloured, and it is not chill filtered, because each and every time that happens, a single malt is diminished. And nobody can argue with me, although it really rankles people in the industry when they hear me saying this, yes again, it really pisses them off. But I'm not beholden to them. I'm not waiting for invites, handouts and free stuff. I'm an independent reviewer. So as long as I am not litigious and I'm not particularly mean about something, I can say what I want. I buy what I review, and I'm glad to do so. And it's your support, your views, clicking in the ads and giving me that Google AdSense revenue, and also my Patreon supporters who just buy me a wee dram every month. It's not a lot, and they get extra content, and they get the live streams. That's what pays for me to buy these bottles that I can then independently, properly independently, not sort of, but properly independently review for you. And in reviewing these bottles, I also review the distilleries. I've been to Springbank a few times. It's worth visiting in your travels. It's a bit out of the way, but I tell you what, see a day trip out of Glasgow, it's a beautiful drive. In beautiful, beautiful landscape. It is well worth the trip. And while you're there, visit Glen Scotia next door and Glengyle Distillery, where they produce Kilkerran. And there'll be more distilleries in Campbelltown soon, because it is a famous location for producing Scotch whisky, and deservedly so. But with Springbank, you see, they're not spending in the advertising, and they're not spending on the initiatives, and they don't have to reach out and offer free stuff to the influencers and journalists and all the rest of it. They just don't have to do it. It's not needed. They don't have to try and twist people's arm to buy their product, because when you visit the distillery, when you're there, you see exactly why Springbank has its reputation. The first thing you'll see there is lots of people working, because they've got a bottling plant, they've got a maltings barn, they get their malt shipped in, sometimes from local farmers and sometimes from further afield, and then what do? They let it rest. They let the barley rest. Then they put it into a steeping tank, and they let the barley steep to start to trigger the germination, to kick the barley alive, and then they remove it manually onto the malting floors, which is open to the elements. They've got some chicken wire along the sides to keep the birds out, who of course love the malting barley. Oh my goodness, you can hear the birds outside going cheep, 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 cheep. Because you're in an authentic distillery. You could be in, anytime you visit Springbank, you could be in a distillery from 50 years ago, the way they used to make whisky. And then it's a lower yield. You see, it's not so efficient. It's not so efficient. They don't get the high alcohol volume from the grain because they're malting it themselves. They're kilning it themselves. They decide what yield they want of alcohol in relation to actual flavour. And once they've kilned the malted barley, and it's all done by experience and by people saying, that's not ready, that is ready, we'll leave it till tomorrow and then it'll be perfect. There's no computers. There's no office wallahs and accountants with pens saying, if we can just get an extra 2% alcohol out that yield, never mind the flavour, to hell with the flavour, let's get an extra 2% yield. With our volume of production, that could save us £100,000 a year. Oh, please. save us from the bean counters. Nothing costs a business more money than the unnecessary bureaucrats, particularly when the computers and the algorithms and the special programs are involved. Talking of which, once the grain has been kilned and milled, it's allowed to rest again. There's no hurry. What's the hurry? We'll do it tomorrow. We're not firing it through like a blast furnace. We'll kiln that barley to the degree that is required till we get what we want. Then they'll put it into the mash tun. I knew. And then they'll get the juice out of that barley. And already, if you get an opportunity to taste that, take it. It's rich. It's like the full fat milk instead of the semi-skimmed milk. Hey, you know as well as I do there's a big difference in the flavour. That's exactly what it's like with the yield of wort. Then it goes into the fermenters, traditional wooden fermenters that add to the flavour. And then it's a slow ferment. They're not racing it through with their superhero, special genetic, super high genetically modified new generation of yeast. They're using what works. And I know you're saying, hey Ralphie, how do you know that they're not using the latest generation of genetically modified yeast? And I don't really, honestly, but what I do know is that, see the results. They're way ahead of most of the competitors in terms of quality. So when you taste the fermented wash, it's delicious. Then it goes into the first still. There's 3 stills at Springbank. Wash still, spirit still number 1, spirit still number 2. The thing about the wash still, it's direct fired. It's got rummagers, it's got gas burners underneath. They scorch the wash. They toast the wash. It adds to the flavour. And they're small stills. You cannot operate these stills unless you've got considerable experience and you know what you're doing. It's complex. There's a lot of fine tuning. You don't get a lot of wriggle room. You can't walk away and start cleaning a floor somewhere else half a mile away and leave the computer to automatically switch off the still when the time's at the appointed time. Not at Springbank. They've got experienced staff overviewing these stills. Still 1, still 2, which is got internal steam coils, still 3. And when they cool the spirit, they're not using cooling sleeves, which are much more efficient than worm tubs. They are using worm tubs at Springbank for cooling. Does that make a difference? Yes. And then, before they even cask the spirit that they've produced, again, they let it rest a bit. Because it's the process. They take their time with it. They don't rush it through the stills, rush it into casks, and rush it into these high-rise, prefabricated, cram as much as you can warehouses. So, what is it makes Springbank so special? I'll tell you what, it is the sum result of every single step in the process. But we're not finished yet. Because when they go to bottle their whiskey, where do they bottle it? At the distillery. What does that mean? They're using the same water as they use for producing the whiskey, because that's the water supply to the distillery. And they use the local, domestic, on-location water supply for bringing down the strength, if required, for their bottling, which if they're single malts, are at 46%, not 40. 46%, where the flavour really, really starts. Are you wondering why so many people are buying independent bottles of whiskey these days instead of official bottlings? It's because they tried the official bottlings and they just want a little bit more. They want better value. They want more flavour. This is why we buy this stuff. For the smell, for the taste. And once we get the smell and once we get the taste, we say, do you know what? That was one hell of an experience. I'm glad I bought that. all over the world, by the way, that, you know, there's millions of liquid tons of liquor getting sold in bars every single day of the week, and most of it is crap. Most of it's crap because people are happy with that because they're just drinking to get pissed. But when people buy Springbank, they're not just drinking to get pissed, although it remains an option. People are drinking this because this delivers what alcohol is capable of delivering. A remarkable, truly authentic, very complex, very sensory rewarding experience. And no other distillery in Scotland goes quite as far as Springbank delivering this. Springbank is the only distillery that does things manually from start to finish. And that, maltmates, that is the tangible, realistic, proper, authentic, rational reason why Springbank Distillery is Scotland's greatest distillery at this moment in time. There you go. Thank you for watching. I'll finally conclude by saying that something Springbank doesn't do, that too many distilleries do, is this fake speak marketing stuff. Springbank don't tell you how utterly unique and exceptional and ultra premium their product is. They talk about it, they'll communicate with you, they'll be happy to tell you what goes on behind the doors, and if you visit the distillery they'll be happy to show you around, but I suggest you book ahead if you want a tour. The thing is, Springbank don't patronise you, and a lot of other distilleries, and not just big distilleries, some small distilleries as well, the novelty of the banal marketing message, it wears thin after a few years because you've heard it all before, and it's the same old, and it just, and you look at the prices jumping up, and you see the quality doesn't match it, and still you're getting all this marketing flannel. And it just comes, as time goes on, trust me, I've been there, I've been through the dark times of listening patiently to this condescending marketing flannel, which, fine for the occasional drinker, but see when you're really invested over a long period of time and your spend is high, it just gets very, very wearing and monotonous. And increasingly fake. And this is why we want to go for authenticity. Any distillery that cuts out the fake and goes for authentic, that's the direction you should spend your money. End of, period. And there's plenty of small distilleries looking at Springbank saying to themselves that huge important question, right, how do we do that? How do we do that? Because that is by far the best way for any distillery to secure the future. I'm Ralphie. Thank you for watching. And if you've enjoyed this and you haven't subscribed, please do. I also have a Patreon channel, and I'll be back shortly with another whiskey review, because it's really what I do here on YouTube. I'm Ralphie, wishing you all the best. And remember, keep it quality, not quantity.